Welcome to another edition of the Business of Coaching workshop. Today we're going to be focused on a very tactical conversation around programming, and as I discussed last week, specifically how we program within the TurnKey Coach method. So I'm going to present a few slides on programming principles. We'll talk about what programming is, why we should systematize it, some programming principles, a 5-point fulfillment framework, and then we'll shamelessly plug TurnKey Coach with some of the features and best practices that I personally use every single day while I'm coaching my clients, including a demo. And at any point in time, if you have any questions for the live audience folks, please drop them in the comments and we'll try to answer those as best we can. So let's start off real quick with what is programming. At its most basic level, it's intentionally manipulating training variables to create a desired adaptation. But beyond sets and reps, it's helping your clients design their life to improve their physical capacity. And our role as a coach is to map the terrain, guide progress, and then adapt as needed. And I would argue to anticipate as well as needed. But all of that aside, really what it comes down to is a shared language for communicating plans, managing progress, and assessing outcomes. As a coach, it's our job, and we are all hired to help our clients achieve some sort of outcome, and we need a way for providing the instructions, having the client report back that they were able to or they weren't able to execute the instructions, and then for us to be able to determine whether or not we're helping our client meet their objective. It ends up looking like this in TurnKey Coach. This is actually my calendar. I took this picture a couple of days ago. But my program looks nothing like somebody else's program. This is totally customized to me, and I think that's one of the key messages that we continue to talk about within the TurnKey Coach method is custom programming. Programming is not a template. It may start with a template, it may include at times a template, but good programming and high value programming, most importantly, is not going to be the same for each individual because each individual is different. And they have different circumstances, different goals, different equipment, different physical capacities, and it's our job to figure out how to build the program in a way that works for the individual. So why systematize? After doing this for the last almost decade, having a systematic way of programming is the only way that I could imagine doing this professionally, because my job is to add as much value as possible in an amount of time that allows me to manage my costs so I can charge an affordable price and my clients will keep working with me. And over the years, when I started, I did not have a system, and it would take all day Sunday basically to program for maybe 5 or 10 clients. And now with a systematic approach that I've developed over the last decade, it's integrated into my feedback, which I can show you how I do. As part of a 3-minute video, 5-minute video, having a system for providing programming enables me to, I think, provide more value while also managing my cost, which is my time. There are times where I have to step outside of the day-to-day system to rethink and restructure a program. There are times when you can't just make the MED change, but day-to-day, having a system allows me to, as I said, add more value in less time. So there's going to be some programs, and as TurnKey Coach users, there are people of all different types of backgrounds that are using TurnKey Coach to program for their clients, but there are going to be some common themes and common principles. Specificity, again, because we are providing custom programs, we know that adaptation, and a big reason they need to be custom programs is because of the said principle. Adaptations are going to be specific to the training stimulus. So how your client's goals are uh, determines what the program needs to be. At some point, there has to be some overload. The training has to challenge the current capacity. Some of you may have heard the zone of proximal development, where in order for growth to occur, you've got to nudge that edge of proximal development, where their capacity is pushed to its limits to some degree. We also need to manage recovery so that you can recover from the stimulus. As people say, the gains are not made in the gym. That's just where we apply the stress. The actual gains are recovering from that stress. And then I personally have experienced that using minimum effective dose programming changes has probably been the biggest game changer for making my programming systematized, so that instead of programming some sort of template and expecting it to work for some period of time, 3 to 6 months, and then trying to figure out what the next template is that I'm going to run. Instead, my programs sort of morph, again, with the exception of a few times a year where a major shift needs to happen. The program sort of morphs through minimum effective dose changes over time to the point where each client has their own custom workout. No two clients of mine are running the same program. Underneath the minimum effective dose principles, we keep coming back to prioritizing simple, hard, and effective programs, and in particular, valuing economy over excess. I can't emphasize this enough from a program effectiveness and for a time efficiency perspective. The more complexity that you add, the more likely you are to both overwhelm your clients, depending on their training advancement level, but it's also going to create more work for you. And I would strongly urge a coach listening to this to challenge themselves to program the least amount of work for both the client and for you, the coach, to do. Not because you're trying to cut corners, but because, again, it's going to add more value, both in terms of the results that the client gets, because it's going to be more effective, and also because you're not going to be giving them a bunch of extra stuff that they can't do, or that runs them into the ground that they can't recover from. And now you're also creating a bunch of extra work for yourself. So simple, hard, effective does not just apply to the programming that the client needs, but it also applies to your strategies for writing programs. So here's 5 points that you can apply. You can consider applying to your fulfillment framework. The first is all new clients need to have some sort of intake and assessment. Now, that's not necessarily need to be a movement assessment, but you need to understand their goals, their training experience, what equipment they have, how much time they have. I think time is actually one of the most important variables that coaches often overlook. How much time they have available throughout the week and then in a session. And if you're not managing time, which we can show you how to do that shortly, if you're not managing time, I think you're missing out on a very important programming variable that impacts your client's training. And then obviously injuries or limitations with any kind of movement are critical for you to know. Template matching and customization. While not everyone is going to be running a template, or very few of my clients ever run a template, I do have sort of programming structures, I would call them, that are essentially kind of mental models or programming models that I set as a baseline. For example, heavy, light, medium, or maybe a Texas method, or maybe it's just a novice linear progression. Those are sort of starting points, kernels of a programming structure that I can then swap out exercises, play with sets and rep schemes, intensity levels based on how the client responds to the starting point. So I'll start with kind of an initial idea and then customize from that proven baseline. As we talked about, minimum effective dose, we want to change as few variables at a time as possible. Again, not just to minimize the amount of work that you're doing, but also so that you can evaluate the effect of the change. If you change 6 different variables all at the same time and you get a result, what good or bad, it's difficult to tell which change it was that actually worked. and which change was noise. I highly recommend including conditioning. Even if you're just a strength athlete, conditioning is going to benefit your strength training. And again, it's going to be an opportunity for you to add more value to your client's program. Finally, monitoring and iterating. I believe very strongly that the best programs are going to be ones in which you are constantly evaluating how the client is responding, not just because their workout happens in some sort of magic vacuum where your program perfectly applies the right amount of stress, but because their life is constantly changing outside of the gym. They might be moving. They might be getting an argument with their wife. I just had this happen last week. A client was having their performance suddenly changed. The program had been going great, and by objective measures, it was a good program for that client. But then the fatigue started going through the roof. The difficulty went through the roof. They weren't recovering or able to progress. And it was only through our day-to-day conversations that it became clear that he had had a whole bunch of stuff happening outside of the gym that was carrying over into impacting his workouts, which included stress with his business, a fight with his wife, and just kind of like a poor sleep was also kind of creeping in. And so we had to adapt the program in real time based on the circumstances changing in a very fluid way. So part of the turnkey coach method is to emphasize enough of a client relationship where you are not just issuing out a program or a template, but that you're interacting with your client in near as close to real time as possible without having to be in the same place at the same time. But having a good enough conversation asynchronously that you can anticipate and adapt the program based on their needs. So TurnKey Coach, if you really go back to the genesis of TurnKey Coach, which we started working on because we wanted to track metrics automatically, which is not necessary. It may not be intuitive that is a programming feature, but I can't imagine programming without having automated metric tracking anymore after using it for the last 5-6 years. Because what I have discovered is that the metrics are inputs into my brain that are context I take into account while modifying the program. Not just whether or not they hit a PR, which obviously is something we're often chasing, but so that I can see what their recent history is. The longer that I work with a client, the more that I like the recent history visualization, because it helps me see very quickly what's been happening with their workout. So all of these features, which you can all read through this list on your own, are ultimately designed to give you information and context at your fingertips so that while you're writing the program, you can very quickly look up either PRs or, like I said, recent history, notes that you've taken over time. You have calendar communication tools that allows the client to very easily mark up when they're traveling, or for you to put notes in that they can see. Maybe it's whatever block that your training is focused on right now. You can have dual calendars with nutrition and workouts organized so that you can manage recovery and nutrition independently, or potentially even with a different coach who has a specialty in nutrition. So as you're reading through and thinking about this list of features, and as I go through and demo them, try to think of them within the context of how it helps you add more value through your programming, because you are able to more quickly customize the program to what the client needs and to understand what the client needs because of all the information that's available. They're not just features because features are neat. They're features because they enable you to be a more professional coach, stay on top of what your client's goals are, what's happening in their life, what equipment they have available, and then provide or to anticipate and provide a custom program. So best practices, I recommend tracking both subjective and objective feedback. We'll talk about that when I start showing you the examples, but for me, 2 critical subjective metrics that I track on every single workout are perceived difficulty and fatigue. It's on a 1 to 5 scale. It could be 1 to 10. You can customize the metrics however you want. But I find 1 to 5 to be accurate enough that clients can leave that note for me, or it gives them a mechanism for telling me this is really hard or I'm really tired. And the difference being that a really difficult workout uh, can happen while the client is able to recover and they don't have a bunch of extra stress. So fatigue could be low while difficulty is high. I consider difficulty to reflect the workout, fatigue to reflect what's happening outside the gym. In contrast, you can have a very easy workout while fatigue is high, and that helps me understand what how they perceive the dose of the workout that I'm giving them, and the fatigue tells me whether they're able to recover. Uh, I started doing this after being programmed a relentless series of box squats where the weight just kept going up, and I could not figure out how to articulate how difficult these were, and I didn't want to make it seem like I was wussing out, but I was giving everything I could to these box squats, and my coach just wasn't picking up on the fact that I was maxed out. And I also had many clients who would just kind of run into a brick wall, and I was failing to recognize that they were working as hard as they were, or feeling as fatigued as they were. So I find those to be really useful tools for communication. And then the objective feedback, along with obviously tracking PRs and recent history, I also value the workout duration because I find that to be a really important feedback data point for how much work I'm giving the client and how well they're able to get through the workout in a reasonable amount of time. If a client's taken more than an hour to an hour and a half, I'm probably programming too much work for them. Obviously, we have the notes, labels, reminders, programming lock dates. Clearly, the calendar notes are useful. Big one here for many years, I would write programs, like I said, on Sunday, and there was no way I had time to explain what I'm doing. With the TurnKey Coach method, which I can show you later, and we've talked about in the past, I include explaining why I'm making the changes and the reason behind them, not just for the sake of novelty, but because I want to I basically have some sort of hypothesis that I want to test by making the change. We can only find out by doing it and then checking the response, but it helps stay aligned with the client, and it's more motivating to them to understand why you're making the change rather than just reacting to some random program change. So tell them what the MED logic is and explain the purpose. And then templates, we have that feature in TurnKey Coach. I like to use them, as I was describing earlier, as a foundation, not a cage. I would say even when the client does run a template, I'm still programming it. I'm customizing it and modifying it in real time. So the template becomes a resource for me to not have to write everything from scratch every single time. That can be very useful, but I'm still customizing it and tweaking it. The one program exception to that might be, or the one template exception might be the hotel gym workout, which I use that's probably the template I use the most and customize the least because somebody says they're going on travel for a week and they want some hotel workouts. 90% of the time they're not going to actually do. It's nice to have that placeholder, just say, hey, here you go, knock this out if you get a chance, but if you don't, no sweat because I only spent 10 seconds adding this to your calendar. So for me, last bullet there, I program ahead at least on average, I would say about a week ahead, but I only write one workout at a time. And that's because, again, I'm incorporating it into my feedback. My programs tend to be a weekly structure where I'm always working 1 day, 1 week in advance. Not always, but as a general, system, that's my default system for programming. I also find that it helps a client to be able to see a week in advance so they can plan their life. Sometimes there's variables come in and change their schedule, and it's nice for them to be able to see what the plan is so that they can adjust if needed or at least communicate what they're doing. That said, I do modify if they are not consistent, then I pull back on that leash essentially. I give what they give. If somebody's consistently hitting 3 or 4 workouts a week, I will ensure that they can always see 3 or 4 workouts. If they're only doing like 1 or 2, I'm only doing 1 or 2. If it's like one workout a week and it's constantly changing, I just put one workout in and move it around as they show me what they get done. And that's just really because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time writing a program that I'm constantly having to change every single time they just do one workout, and then I got to move the whole week. But that's just my experience. All right, I'm going to pause briefly here to see if there are any questions. Anybody?
No questions or comments at this time.
All right. So let's go into a demo of some of the features here so far. Like we've talked about right off the bat, we've got PR tracking. So every single exercise I've ever done, every single set and rep combination I've ever done is tracked. And I can very quickly go back and see the workout. If I want to go back and find the day that I hit a 407 bench press, I can click this link. And of course, the demo is not going to work at the moment. But I can go back and find, there's one that actually worked. So here's when I hit the 130 kilo clean and jerk. The video, so because this was so long ago, the video is archived, but I can quickly download that and pull up the video and see the 130 clean and jerk. So this is actually on the blocks. This is not my actual PR, but oh, block clean. Sorry, I pulled up block clean. So that is my PR block clean, and I can see both the double and the single if I want to download those videos. PR tracking. This table I use often when I'm writing a program and I can see, or I'm watching their bar speed. I can tell things are getting difficult. I will often reference this table. Let's say somebody's getting, they hit like a 3 RM in their press. I'll go find their press and try to see if there's another rep combination that I can pick off. So, for example, if we've been hitting 5 RMs a whole bunch and it's getting really grindy, I have a couple of options. Usually I'll go to a triple and try to add a little bit more weight. Maybe I'll add another rep. But if I've been hitting let's say I do a triple and then we do a couple of weeks of triples and then we go up to hit a single, I'm at, let's say I hit this 122.5 kilo press PR, I might go back and say, well, am I in range for a 5 RM at 110 for this client? This is my own PRs, but I'll look for opportunities to go get a PR as I'm progressing and kind of ratcheting up the intensity in the program, for no other reason because it's fun. And I think, I think it's fun to snag a PR if you just happen to be within reach of one. And you're trying to make a decision. So again, if I think about going back to my comment earlier, you're trying to use the information to give you context for making decisions as you're writing a program. Again, 99% of the time, I'm just chipping away at MED, making little shifts in their program here and there, but I'll pull up the PR table from time to time or look at the recent history to see if there's a opportunity to make a slightly different change to go hit a PR or do something a little bit fun and take advantage of that information. Notes are another huge feature that you can use. You can keep track of both calendar date specific notes. So these are notes my coach has left over time. A lot he uses it mostly for programming changes. You can see these go all the way back to 2021. And you can also add notes that are not time sensitive, so or associated with dates on the calendar. So I can track injuries, I can track equipment, I can track my goals, and you can edit and color code those anytime. You can also add labels, an infinite number of labels that are color coded in custom freeform text. So if my typical structure is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but you can modify that as needed. You can pull up your chat message. This doesn't work because that would be chatting with myself, but For my other clients, it'll work. And then you can obviously assign templates. That's going to be a bit outside the scope of this presentation to go into all of the template features, but you can write templates ahead of time. Here's the famous hotel workout. Let's say I want to add a hotel workout to my calendar. I can pop down to next week. Andrew's hotel workout. Click the check mark, and it will very quickly add that to the calendar, and now I can go through and customize that. You can also show and hide details to see more or less information. So by showing the details, I now get to see metrics if I have any added, which is you can see as an example in the hotel workout. If I hide details, that'll hide the metrics and only show the top assigned set. This can be useful if you want to do longer range programming. By hiding details and then going full screen, you can see now I can easily see a snapshot of 4 weeks at a time, whereas even with full screen and details showing, I can only get 3. So I find the hide details and full screen to be really useful when I'm trying to do long range programming and I want to be able to see 4 weeks at a time. You can always go back and find previous times on the calendar and then quickly snap back to today, just to name a few of the features on this page. As I mentioned, you can also have a dual calendar for nutrition, and we often use visual food diaries, but you can use these as weekly check-ins. You can track, obviously, any custom set of metrics that you want your client to record, and it will visualize that as the client enters the data. In addition to all of that, I would say, in terms of how I view the TurnKey Coach method, part of my programming input is the actual client's workout. Along with having a hard time programming without automated metric tracking, I also have a hard time tracking or programming if I can't see the bar speed. So I will often watch the client work out and write the program. So I'm just Control C, Control V. Like I said, I like to work a week ahead. So it's important to me as I'm watching, especially as this client, for example. Uh-oh. We got a frozen screen here. Trying to do too much at the same time. Okay, here we go. So this client is getting pretty close to a PR. In fact, repeated the weight last week. So here's a great example of where it's useful to see both the PR history. So we've worked our way right up to a PR, and now we're repeating to see if we can reduce the RPE. I get to watch the bar speed as he's getting his final reps done, and we want to make a call for next week. I look at that and think, hey, let's go for it. You're about to travel. He's going to Korea. So you can see a nice feature here. This is the calendar block off date, which you can get to from the ellipses. Click the calendar blockout days, and you can go select the days on this calendar and leave a note. So he's let me know he's going to Korea for 2.5 weeks for work. And this is a great opportunity to take a shot at a PR. I also know, since he's leaving on the 1st, that what I'm probably going to do is a bit of a hybrid workout. I'm going to take out the snatch and the RDL. I can delete, and we'll probably take the lat pull downs out and just do a bench, or probably do, bench, squat, row. And now I've got him set for the program next week. I'm going to, like I said, we're going to shoot for the 97.5 kilo PR. Take a look at the barbell row. And of course, I would be normally providing him feedback while working on this, but for the purpose of today, I'm just talking about how I'm using this for programming information. We won't go into the technical feedback quite yet. That looked pretty easy. I would definitely at least add a couple reps here. Let's see if we can go to 8. And then we'll watch the lat pull down, and that would feed into, if I were programming as lat pull down, I would take that into account. there was I lost a train of thought there. Oh, um, so speaking of templates, if I thought, for example, that this series of weeks was a program that I really liked, you'll see here, if I select those weeks, I can save it as a template. I can also copy these workouts and paste them into a template. So templates, we've added a lot of features over the last year where you can very easily create templates as you program and go back and forth between the template and the normal calendar. Also want to emphasize what I think is one of the more unique and useful features from TurnKey Coach, which is that I can edit these programs in mobile. This is what it looks like on the phone. So you can scroll left and right in vertical. You can go to landscape if you want to see more of a week. You can drag and drop workouts. Ooh, I got selected here. That's the problem. So if you want to drag and drop, of course, this is not going to work at the moment, but trust me that it does. I think it's just the user interface here. But let's say the drag and drop doesn't work. You can very easily move workouts with the Move Workout button. And you can also drag and drop exercises, which is not going to work in this demo at the moment. Let's see here. Nope. I should have logged in with my phone so it would actually work. But you can drag and drop both exercises and workouts. You can click into it and edit this, add metrics, add exercises. And I program all the time from the airport. Find this to be a very useful feature. All right, we are just a little bit over time. We've been able to scratch the surface of programming with the TurnKey Coach methods. Dan, any questions at this point?
A couple of questions from Coach Stephen Woolery on Instagram. Okay. They're not showing up in StreamYard, so I'll just read them.
Okay.
First is, do you program percentages using the PRs? I've been looking into Westside dynamic effort training, and the wave loading is something I'd like to use eventually with my clients.
Yes, absolutely. We have some really cool features for those that are percent-based programming. So this will be a great opportunity to go into templates and show you, let's see, a good example of this is probably the Reynolds DUP Advanced. So if you're a template-based programmer or a percentage-based programmer, you can see here the Reynolds DUP, for example, has a lot of percentage-based assignments. And so you can write out a full percentage-based program. This is a 14-week, 4-day split. You can see it goes all the way down in here to week 14. When you go to assign this template, it will prompt you. Let's say I want to add this to Vernon's calendar. Pick the start date. Let's say we're going to go start next week. It will also prompt me for any exercise that has a percentage-based program, what I want that 100% to be based off of. So you can see over here on the left, for example, there's a bench at 70%, a deadlift at 62%. There's some RPE stuff in here as well. But if I want by the end of this cycle, because I believe this program ramps up to some 102% actually attempts by the end. If I want this to be based off a 500-pound squat and a, let's say a 275 press, and we want to get a 600-pound deadlift, and we want to get a 405 bench, when I click assign template, it's going to multiply those percentages by the planned 100% weight and then populate the calendar with those actual weights. You can also program the template without assigning the 100%, and it will just assign the percentages. But if you want to customize the program for your client, this is a really great way to save yourself a lot of time where you don't have to go in and replace every single percentage with weight on the bar. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer because I wanted to take a little aside to show off one of the features TurnKey Coach has, but Short answer would be yes, I do program with some percentages, but most of the time I try to do the math for my clients so that I'm adding that value to the custom programming. Does that answer your
One
question?
other question, last question.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't responded, but he had
Yep.
one other question. Is there a specific way to mass input exercise library videos? I assume that means bring in more than one at a time.
Yes, we do have that ability. I would say it's in beta test. So if you do have I should have actually demoed that, by the way. I listed it as a feature that all the video or all the exercises are listed in a drop down. You can quickly edit those one at a time. But yes, if you have a list of exercises that you want to mass import a bunch of videos, if we can get a spreadsheet of a list of those exercise names and a corresponding video that you want to import, we can automate that process. You're given by default something on the order of, I think it's several thousand exercises that are in our library at this point. Not all of them have demo videos, but the vast majority do, and we can help set up your library if you've got the list of exercises and videos.
Cool. I think there's a delay because it's on Instagram, but he said the percent response was good. Thanks. So
Okay,
that was the
awesome.
last question.
Just a couple other features I can show while we're working here. The calendar works almost exactly like a spreadsheet. There are, by the way, shortcut keys up here in the top, but they're very similar to the way any Microsoft or Google spreadsheet works. Select all, cut, copy, paste, select a workout, delete a workout, enter a new workout. So I recommend getting very familiar with the shortcut keys, and then you can speed up your programming process here. So if I want to go through, for example, and remove that template. Oh boy, I'm getting hung up. Okay, here we go. So if I just want to go remove that template, I can very quickly go through, select all each week, 14 weeks, 56 workouts, click delete, good to go. If I catch it in time and I want to undo that delete, you can save your life there. Those have definitely been some panic-inducing moments. People sometimes delete a workout. If a workout is marked complete, it requires that I enter this. I'll just leave it at 0 for now. If I mark it complete, I cannot accidentally delete it. So if I select all and delete the week, it will only delete the completed workouts. Save you some pain there. If you select the individual workout, it will ask you if you're sure, but it still won't let you delete it because it's completed, because we don't want to lose your workout history. So the only way you can go and delete that completed workout is to mark it incomplete and then delete it. All right. Any other questions before we sign off for the day? We could keep going a long time, but I think this is a good intro into programming and the TurnKey Coach method. Thank you all for joining. Please feel free, if you have any questions, to email me, ajackson@turnkey.coach. Or if you are ready to schedule a free discovery call, go to turnkey.coach/BOCCALL, BOC and you will get a meeting set up with either me or Mac McGregor, the famous Mac McGregor over in Scotland, and we will help you. We'll help determine if TurnKey Coach would be a good fit for you, as well as set you up and get you going as quickly as possible with your clients. Thank you again, and we will see you next week to talk about technical feedback, movement coaching.